Welcome to the Britain-Palestine Project podcast, part of our wider mission to promote peace with justice, security, and equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians. I'm Deanna Safier, writer, podcaster, and events manager here at the Britain-Palestine Project. You'll hear from historians, diplomats, activists, and witnesses as we examine urgent humanitarian and political issues and unpack the complexities, confront the truths, and explore what a just and peaceful future could look like. Thank you for joining us. Let's get started.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. You all know the drill because I see a lot of regulars. We are going to just wait a little while before we start in earnest because we have a really, really high registration number for this event. I'm not surprised because it's a topic that everyone's fascinated about, I think, but more on that in a bit. I'm just going to start by telling you I'm Deanna Safier. I work with the Britain-Palestine Project on their events programs, such as these webinars that we convert into podcasts. So they're all recorded. You can find them on our website. You can find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also find them on YouTube if you want to watch the videos. The Britain-Palestine Project has the aim of peace and justice, with justice, security, and equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians. The mission being acknowledging Britain's continuing historic responsibilities to uphold equal rights for the Israeli and Palestinian peoples through popular education and advocacy, and to convince the British government to recognize the state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel. We had a very interesting conference recently on the rule of law. I'm pleased to say that all of those sessions are all on our website, as well as being on the on all of those platforms I mentioned where you listen to your podcasts, on YouTube as well. So if you missed our conference or if you missed part of it, then please do go back and have a watch. We had some fantastic speakers. We had the ambassador of Palestine here to the UK, Hussam Somlot. He opened it up. And we've had lawyers and international law experts such as Baroness Kennedy, Lady Hale, all speaking, Michael Svard from over in Israel, a human rights lawyer, Israeli human rights lawyer. We had Raji Shorani and Dalal Irikat over from Palestine as well. It was phenomenal, the speakers that came out of it. And we also have our government asks. We have 5 asks that we had prepared that we have been presenting to the British government, to parliamentarians as a result. So all of that is on the website. I'll post a link in a moment once we get started, but do catch up on that. We also had a really good screening recently of the film Bye Bye Tiberius with a talk with the one of the co-writers. So please do sign up for our mailing list if you haven't already, so that you can be kept in the loop, things like that. If you are a friend of the Britain-Palestine Project, that means signing up for a monthly donation of any amount. Then you get things like our film screenings for free and other paid events at a discounted rate, like our conference and so forth. But these webinars are free. We try to have 2 a month. And we've got a bunch in the pipeline that are super interesting. We're trying to arrange one on mental health in Gaza, in particular of children, because you can imagine that that is going to be an ongoing crisis that, even if we had peace tomorrow, would be something that will need a lot of care and attention. And we've got a few others lined up that we're very interested and excited to share with you. So we've got a bunch of you here now, so I can... we've got Tim. Hi, Tim. How are you doing? Are you joining us? Or are you wanting to be a attendee?
No, I'm a watcher, I'm afraid.
All right, I will move you over to be a watcher.
Okay.
Just bear with me. So let me introduce our speaker finally. This is Professor Menachem Klein. He's active in many unofficial negotiations with Palestinian counterparts. He's taken part in several of our past conferences as well. In October 2003, Professor Klein signed, together with the prominent Israeli and Palestinian negotiators, the Geneva Agreement, a detailed proposal for a comprehensive Israeli and Palestinian Peace Accord. He's a senior fellow in Bruno Kreisky Forum for International Dialogue and a board member of Palestine-Israel Journal. Previously, he was a board member of B'Tselem, an organization that we work with very regularly and have had many speakers join us for webinars as well. The Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories. He's the author of several publications, including Lives in Common, which is the New Republic's 2014 Best Global Nonfiction book. Today, he has very kindly agreed to join us to talk about the sort of attitudes in the Israeli society, how Israeli society became radicalized. He's going to discuss with us why normal Israelis have come to support the Gaza war crimes. So I'm going to hand over to you, Menachem, and let you speak and give us a little opening. And then I've got a few questions that I'm going to come and relay to you. Sorry, some of you, I should have said, may have noticed that although he joined us temporarily, Tim is not feeling well, so I will be in conversation with you today. And then we will be taking some questions from the audience. So please do post any questions you have for Menachem in the chat box, and I will relay as many as we have time for after we've had a little conversation. As you know, we never have time for all of them, so please don't be offended if I don't get time to ask your question, but I will try to get a question in on each of the different themes that come in. So over to you, Menachem. I will come join you in a moment.
Thank you, Dee. I'm very happy to be here with you and to be physically in London, actually. And first of all, I would like to wish to Tim full recovery and good health as soon as he can make it. The sooner, the better. I will start with a short introduction, and then let's move to Q&A regarding the Israeli perspective on the war. First, I would like to state that in my view, in my analysis, this war is a formative event, no less formative than the 1948 and the 1967 wars. In the history of the Middle East, the history of Israel-Palestine relations. It changes everything, really everything. Just if we look around, we see that the regime change in Syria, for instance, the whole region is changing during this war. What I would like to discuss is not the geopolitics, but also what happened, but rather what happened to the Israeli society. I assume that most of you do not follow Hebrew social media, but anyone who reads Hebrew social media can, especially from the outside, can be shocked on what's going on there in the Israeli domestic discourse. How far the Israeli society radicalized. Soldiers proudly upload photos of war crimes they enthusiastically committed. Army commanders and citizens use genocidal terminology occasionally blended with biblical quotations, and I have reference of all of this so I can share it with anyone who is interested. Both soldiers and civilians take pride in the dehumanization of the Palestinians, unrelated to what they do, because what they are, not what they do. Senior politicians, university professors, lawyers, rabbis, and journalists publish statements in favor of genocide and mass expulsion. The perception that this is an existential struggle akin to us or them moved from the racist fringe of the militant right to the center and reached a stronghold even in the center-left circles. So something very, very bad happened to to the Israeli society. So what happened? Why it happened? I would like to present my reading of what happened to most of the Israeli Jews. What clouded their minds and hardened their hearts to what the IDF was doing in their name to the Palestinians and previously also to the Lebanese. By no means, and I would like to emphasize this, by no means the following statements, the following suggestions are not an attempt to justify war crimes and atrocities or genocide, but explore what made them possible. Obviously, the radicalization is a collective traumatic reaction to Israel's severe mortal and material losses and the war crimes committed by Hamas forces, Gaza Strip residents, and Hezbollah forces. The unprecedented occupation and evacuation of Israeli settlements and towns empowered the popular belief that their existence was undermined. Fearing a sudden attack from Hamas, many central Israeli citizens, even leftists, carry weapons. Moreover, taking into account that Israeli existential fear is genuine, I would like to discuss what type of existence Israeli Jews have and what kind of a state they are afraid of losing. That's the key question that I would like to deal with. It's not just an existential threat, but an existential threat to a certain type of a state. I identify three interrelated structural transformations that the Israeli society moved through prior to the October 7 horrific attack. And the following are the three structural transformations. One, the establishment of a single apartheid-style regime with powerful ethno-religious factors. Second, elite transformation. Third, a cold civil war inside the Israeli society. Hamas attack found Israel transforming and deeply divided between two confronting identity groups and social classes. So the Israelis felt that their state is in danger. I skip few items, and I would like for a moment to move to Hamas. I assume that many Palestinians, Hamas members and supporters included, share the abstract vision of freeing Palestine from Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. However, I don't know on any Hamas document explaining that in 2023 it concluded that Israel has weakened to the extent that Hamas is qualified to exterminate the Zionist state. Indeed, Hamas documents show the contrary. Hamas feared that the near to conclude talks on normalization agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel would soon provide Israel with the needed political power and legitimacy to crash the Palestinian independence aspirations. Thus, both Hamas and Israel aggressive operations were driven by deep despair and imagined existential threats, and both of them did not pre-plan for the day after the war. Moreover, Hamas prioritized its military attack as Plan B when Israel and the United States, with Mahmoud Abbas' responsiveness, succeeded in early 2021 to block its integration in a reformed and newly elected PLO and PA institutions. Hamas-Fatah agreement in Beijing in July 2024 was an update of their previous 2021 agreement. So the attack came when Israeli society was in a crisis, in a transformation, and therefore Israeli society feared that imagined that its very existence is on stake. Actually, this imagination is still in force nowadays. And this brings many Israelis to the conclusion that this is a war of us against them. It's an existential war of us against them, and our existence is in danger. So this is the framework. This leads Israelis to implement war crimes, to use a genocidal language, and actually commit war crimes, not only in Gaza Strip, in lower scale, also in the West Bank. Before that, it was also made in South Lebanon. So this is the context, and this is the context of the very tough language that Israelis use in their social media discourse. Israel hopes to restore the government, the society, the coalition hopes to restore the Jewish supremacy. And what the transformation that Israel went through is from the militaristic Zionism that ruled the country from 48 up to Netanyahu's coalition, up to the 21st century. This elite was moved away, was pushed aside by the new elite, the Netanyahu's coalition that I titled as Jewish supremacy. It did not came, the Jewish supremacy coalition did not came out of the blue. It came out from the militaristic Zionism. The militarist Zionism has an ethno-national, strong, powerful ethno-national element inside it, but it was restrained, much restrained, and take into consideration other factors. The Jewish supremacy coalition is very different in principle, and the Jewish supremacy social forces now rules the army. They expanded into the security services, the government agencies, and they rule the country, and they manage a legal transformation, a new judicial system and new legal system inside Israel in order to further base their rule. They also rule the media. Actually, Netanyahu does not need emergency rules in order to hold power. He rules the media, and the media brainwash the Israelis. The media directed by the Jewish Supremacy Coalition and by Netanyahu actually brainwash the Israeli mind and move them away from seeing what the IDF is doing on their behalf to the poor Gaza people. Okay, now I think I made my point. Let's move to Q&A.
Fantastic. So if you have any questions for Menachem, please do pop them in the chat box and we'll try to get through as many as possible. I just want you to know that he won't be looking at the chat box while we are doing this presentation, but I will be sharing it with him afterwards. So any comments and questions that we don't have time for, he will see them. So don't worry about that. I found it so interesting to get a bit of an insight into the Israeli society, which I am outside of. So that is really fascinating to hear. And just to highlight that point that I think is crucial, that Hamas, the attack that Hamas committed on the 7th of October happened at such a point of transformation, and it was the perfect storm for what happened thereafter. And very much we see it time and time again in history, right? Creating that other enemy is the best way of uniting an uncohesive society. And as you said, there was this dilemma of these two faces of Israel and these two dichotomies. So I wanted to ask you first, because I think you are so incredibly brave to be speaking out the way you do. How is it to be in Israel as an outspoken opponent of not just the Gaza policy, but the other policies, to use words like an apartheid tendencies and so forth? Do you feel threatened? Do you get threatened?
I'm not getting threatened. I don't face threats and so on. But I find myself in the margins. I find myself debating with many social media friends, but still, people like me, we form up a small group that we meet and we discuss and we prepare an alternative. We prepare an alternative that we titled as peace based on equality and partnership. And we would like to offer it for the day after the war, for the day when the Israelis will start looking for an alternative to the bloodshed and the war atrocities and the genocide. Partnership-based peace suggests to have two-state solution, but very, very different two-state solution than the one that was discussed in Oslo. Very different one. Based on equality and partnership and open borders, rather than we are here, they are there, and let's build a wall between us. No, just the contrary. And we must share the land. We must share our roots. We must acknowledge that both people have historical and religious attachment to the land. Palestine is not exclusively Jewish. And this guides our future vision. So we would like to suggest a very different two-state concept with, let's say, confederal arrangements that may develop to a confederation in a later stage. But we acknowledge that the Palestinians wish to have their own state. They have the right to do so. They want to feel free from the Israeli occupation. And the Jewish people, the Jewish component of Palestine wants also to have its own state with equal rights to its Palestinian citizens.
So just to emphasize, you are not talking about, this has come up in the questions, you're not talking about a one-state solution, you're talking about a two-state solution / confederation, which is an idea that has been also discussed quite prolifically.
Yeah, I find I analyze the one-state solution and I find it more problematic than the two-state solution. The two-state solution is not free from problems. Definitely it is problematic. But the question is, which option is less problematic?
The most inconvenient, most mutually unacceptable solution.
Yeah, but which type? The key question is which type of the two-state solution is most rejected? And my answer is that was offered in Oslo process. the one that Ehud Barak and the labor movement and the militaristic Zionism offered in 2000 or in 2008 and so on. The arrangement, it's forthcoming in very few days, my analysis of the security arrangements that the Israeli administration and the American administration, Democratic administration, suggested for the two-state solution. It's actually an Israeli overriding state and security supervision and over the state of Palestine and limiting its sovereignty. This is not what I mean. Definitely not what I mean. What I mean is a fully sovereign Palestinian state next to fully sovereign sovereign Israel. So, and with open borders.
Well, there's been a few questions. I'm going to go. I've still got some more questions of my own, but on that topic, we've had a few people ask about the settlements. How does the settlements fit into such a plan? Does this new version or new vision of a two-state solution confederation accommodate the settler communities within the West Bank? How does it aim to deal with that problem?
Okay. Of course, settlers who wish to remain in Palestine, in sovereign Palestine, and in my proposal, the state of Palestine can enjoy sovereignty on all 1967 territories. Okay, settlers that wish to remain in Palestine as Palestinian residents, Israeli citizens residing in Palestine. The settlements will have to go through two transformation elements, principal elements. First, to become fully under Palestinian law, which means that the Palestinian ministries will be responsible for the development, for housing, for building, zoning, everything in the settlement. Not Israel, in the settlement. The settlements that will remain there will be fully under the state of Palestine legislation order. That's one. Okay. Second, settlements will not be exclusive Jewish. What makes the settlements a settlement is these two elements, that it is managed, ruled, and part of the Israeli legal system. Second, it is exclusive Jewish. And I may add also the third element. It is, let's say, an arm sent into the Palestinian territories in order to bring later Israeli sovereignty. It is a stronghold in Palestine to bring later or de facto Israeli sovereignty. All these three should not exist in settlements that will remain inside Palestine. So this is a, let's say, settlements will stop being settlements in this view. I would add another element. Palestinian citizens that wish to reside inside the state of Israel as Palestinian citizens and Israeli residents will have the chance to make it. This will include not only refugees, but also West Bank natives that they can reside in Israel. So the two states can agree on this formula, which takes out the nerves of the substance of the settlements as settlements as such.
I'm really pleased that we've got Helena Cobban, who I'm sure you know of, and who is an expert on Hamas. She's joined us today, and she's asked an interesting question. She says, I'd love to ask Menachem about the contribution he thinks many decades of US governmental coddling of increasingly right-wing Israeli governments and failure to uphold fundamentals of international law has made to allowing/encouraging the continuation of that lurch to the right.
Unfortunately, the US support is not just right, the American right-wing support. Also, the Democrats massively supported Israel, unfortunately. I would even add that Biden administration helped to undermine the international law system accepted after World War II during this war. So, unfortunately, also Putin and Netanyahu undermined the international law and the international order that was established after World War II, following the Holocaust. This order is undermined, and I'm very sad to say that, by the state of Holocaust victims that was founded by many Holocaust victims against what happened to their relatives. It aimed to protect the world from the return of World War II horrors. And unfortunately, both American parties, Republican and Democratic parties, and the Israeli regime, previously also Putin in Russia, now put a big question mark on this world order. We should go back to that order. We should not boycott the ICC. The ICC is a pillar and the ICJ in Hague are the pillars of the new order, and the international community should re-empower this world order.
It's terrifying that this isn't just an attack on the Palestinian people, but it is an attack on the international law, the rule of law, like you said, everything that was put in place to stop the horrors of another world war, and that is falling apart around us. It should be scary for everyone, regardless of how involved or invested they are in Israel and Palestine. This is something scary for everyone. I'm flitting a bit between subjects. We have so many questions coming in, I can't even keep up with them. But I wanted to ask about the right of return. We've had loads of questions about that. How does that fit in this sort of confederation idea? Would myself, for example, have the right to return to Jerusalem?
He is welcome, of course. There are, in my view, okay, previously I said how the right of return can be materialized by letting Palestinian refugees to reside in Israel as the citizens of the state of Palestine, but residing in Israel. Another part of those who wish to become Israeli citizens should be let to make it, and then immigrate to Israel as any other immigrant. Israel, in my view, and I'm not the only person that suggests that, Israel should change its law of return. that was accepted in 1948 following the World War II and the Holocaust, providing automatic citizenship to every Jew that wants to immigrate. We can amend it, we can change it to immigrate to normal, so-called normal immigration law with a special paragraph with special benefit given to any Jew that is threatened, that his very existence abroad is threatened, that he can find rescue in the state of Israel. So he can enjoy automatically citizenship in Israel if his life, his very existence is in danger. So this can be accepted. But today, after almost 80 years of existence, we can have a normal immigration law, and then any Palestinian who wants to immigrate to Israel and by that exercise his or her right of return should get it. Compensation and reparation are also part of the how right of return can be materialized, and Israel must, in my view, Israel should recognize the right of return, that the Palestinians has right to whole Palestine. Palestine spread from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, and both people are attached to the land and have the right to return or to reside on this land. 48 war refugees were expelled by force or by fear. They left fearing war atrocities. It's very normal. Also, in this war, just remind you, more than 300,000 Israelis evacuated their homes from the border next to Gaza and next to Lebanon because they feared the war. They are internal refugees or displaced, and it's very, very normal. So the same happened to many Palestinians in 1948. Following the 1948 war, Israel did not let them back. This must change. And there is also, we cannot ignore, we should not ignore, that there are in Israel, Israeli Palestinians, Israeli citizens of Palestinian origins that are internal displaced. There are families that were evacuated and deported from their homes during the 1948 war. They should also get compensation. Their rights should be acknowledged by the state of Israel, and they should be part of the 1948 refugee settlement.
I'm glad you touched on reparations. That was asked by a lot of people, including Hilary Weiss, a friend of the organization. I want to ask you about the Zionist ideology. Does it inevitably involve the domination of the whole of Palestine, or is there an alternative brand of Zionism possible? Is there one that would involve genuinely sharing on equal terms the land with Palestinians, or is that impossible?
Once the late Israeli Jewish author Amos Oz said that Zionism is a family name, not a given name. And following discussions about Zionism nowadays, I'm afraid that in many times those who debate relate to Zionism as a given name, not a family name. In a family, there are different streams in Zionism. as I said, there is the what the labor movement, what I called militaristic Zionism, which is different than Jewish supremacy, and both of them are different than, let's say, the Echad Ha'am ideology of building a spiritual center in Palestine. And they are very different than Brit Shalom, the peace alliance that wanted a binational state in Palestine. So Zionism is a very, very, very big family name. Also, I must say, recent studies on Jabotinsky, the right-wing, the founder of the Israeli right-wing political streams, Vladimir Jabotinsky, he wrote about confederation. He believed in confederation. So we must go back and say, or we must denounce which kind of Zionism we are against too. Okay, not all the Zionist ideologies or ideological groups are the same. So it will be mistaken to identify Zionism with Bezalel Smotrich. This is giving him the path to be the patron, or to patronize Zionism. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are one example, one stream within Zionism. And I am against it. But if, let's say, Zionism is about Jewish state, not necessarily the state borders are from the river to the sea, and in principle we can say even less than 67 borders. Jewish sovereignty can be, let's say, limited to Tel Aviv, and it's still Jewish sovereignty. So not the border compose the sovereignty. Borders are formed by a sovereign state, but the principle of sovereignty should be divided from the sovereign borders. And also, sovereignty means different things. It can mean confederation, it can mean federation, it can mean different things. So we must expand our discussion, our discourse, our views, not limited to Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich will pass away, will move away in history, and still a liberal Zionism will remain.
Thanks for that. We've got a bunch of questions on Israeli public opinion. One from Jim, I'm sorry if I'm saying anyone's names wrong, Jim Dingyman. Can Menachem go further into the present situation regarding public opinion? How is the increased international isolation impacting on Israeli public opinion? Do they feel it?
Unfortunately, not as much as needed. The Israelis in general, except a few that are attentive to what's going on in Europe and in the world in general, they live in a bubble. They live in a bubble. They choose to live in a bubble. They follow the government. They follow the IDF spokesperson. They follow Netanyahu. and they believe that every criticism on Israel is anti-Semitism. Right? They identify criticism on Israel as anti-Semitism. They are in a mental bunker. As I said, it is based on existential threat, which is an imagined existential threat. And it is built on first on the war atrocities out of Hamas, horrified war crimes implemented in October 7, the immediate move within one day from feelings that we rule the Middle East, we are the strongest, and nobody can harm us, to an attack that Israel never before, since 48, never experienced. No Arab army hurt Israel in such a scale as Hamas attack. No Arab army since 48 occupied parts of sovereign Israel and pushed over 300,000 Israelis away from their homes and made them displaced, and occupied kibbutzim and towns and murdered so many Israelis. We must take it into account, implementing war crimes. So it has a huge effect on the Israeli mind. And Israelis fear. Actually, they fear. If you go and visit Israeli towns and main cities, you see so many Israelis carrying weapons. Yeah,
and that's interesting. We had a bunch of questions like from Andrew Cunningham about the militarization of Israeli society. And I want to follow up on what you're saying about this existential threat from someone, Daniel Ben-Ami. On what basis do you argue that the existential threat to Israel is imaginary? There are documented and explicit threats to destroy Israel, not only from Hamas, but also Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran, and Turkey. And these are also well documented in neutral media. So is there a basis in reality of this fear?
As I said in my opening, the documents that I saw of Hamas say the opposite. They were willing to back Mahmoud Abbas' two-state solution. I have a protocol of their meeting of Hamas leaders with Mahmoud Abbas and the Qatari Sheikh in 2014, and then Hamas changed its political document in 2017, and then 2021 agreed with Fatah on a way ahead towards a two-state solution, and later on in 2024 in Beijing. So all the documents show just the opposite. That's in the Palestinian front. In Hezbollah and Iran, they speak about it, but we don't have any plan, any document how they can achieve that. If they move from rhetoric to planning. Actually, Iran is 2,000 kilometers away from Israel. It hurts Israel by missiles, but cannot send tanks to conquer Israel and liberate Palestine for the Palestinians. It's a wishful thinking, an ideology that is far from capability to be implemented on the ground, boots on the ground. We should be very, very realistic on this. And the Iranian nuclear project has also a defensive aim rooted in the Iranian history. So we should not buy any declaration coming out from Netanyahu's office. The wish of the Iranian mullahs to liberate Palestine from the Jews, from Zionists, not the Jews, it is there. It is stated, but it's not a policy. It's not their actual policy. They cooperate, they manage proxies because Israel rules the Middle East. And they want to balance the power of Israel with their own power. The same with Hezbollah.
Thanks for that. Going back to your comment about the Israeli society living in a bubble, it almost takes more effort these days, I think, to stay in that bubble with social media. And, you do have publications in Israel like Haaretz who do comment on what's happening in Gaza. So I guess it's the algorithm, isn't it? You follow a few things and that's all that you see. But there is more and more the opportunity to look outside your bubble these days, but people have to want to, don't they? And that's the problem, I think. I've got a question from Brian Bravati, who is I still call him our new executive director. I probably will for a long time, but he has been with us since January. So hello, Brian. He has asked you, he says, you speak of a civil war in Israel. Given the electoral system and the power of what you call the new elite, what is the road for an alternative government?
I was just to elaborate in few sentences what I mean by a civil war. At the moment, it is a cold civil war. And the cold civil war, and there were few incidents that this cold civil war turned to be a hot civil war. It was in 2021 in the what we call mixed Israeli-Arab towns. But the cold civil war has two fronts. One front is between former elite and the new elite. The fight, the debate regarding the new legal system suggested by the current government that will turn Israel from so-called liberal democracy to an authoritarian regime. And the other front is between Israeli Jewish citizens and Israeli-Palestinian citizens. And this front is no less important than the previous one. We saw that in 2000 Intifada clashes in mixed towns in 2021, or in the new basic law. Israel is a Jewish state basic law that downgrade the citizenship status of the Israeli Palestinians. This front between Jews and Arabs inside Israeli citizenship is an outcome of the de facto annexation of the West Bank and the ruling over Gaza Strip. The de facto one state that its subjects are 50-50, 50% Jews, 50% Arabs, cannot remain liberal democracy. It must move from so-called liberal democracy, with the very, very few credentials of liberal democracy, to Jewish supremacy, and change the status of the other ethnic group within the sovereignty, within the Israeli sovereignty. It must do it. and here there is a cold civil war. On this, for instance, there is an attempt now in the Knesset to expel Ayman Odeh, the Israeli-Palestinian Knesset member, the leader of one of the Israeli Arab parties, to expel it from the Knesset. There are calls to not to let Israeli Arabs to run to Knesset, the next elections in the Knesset, to the Knesset.
And to put it in perspective, there are about 20% of Israel's population is Palestinian citizens of Israel. So it's not it's a significant minority, isn't it?
Right. But the tragedy is that the Israeli center left, let's say the militaristic Zionism, the former elite, join the right-wing Jewish supremacy in this. All the Jews against the 80% against the 20%. And unfortunately, the militarist Zionism is in a trap. Once there is a war, once the war opened and the war continues, because they are militaristic, they are with the war, and they support the Jewish supremacy. So then you see Gantz and Lapid and Lieberman join the government once the Gantz and Eisenkot, former chief of staff, were in the government, join Netanyahu, backing Netanyahu. You see that the pilots participate, they do not refuse. The refuseniks are very, very small number refuse to serve in the IDF because the militaristic Zionism is in a trap. It is first and foremost militaristic Zionism. And once there is a war, they are called to participate in it. And here the Netanyahu government and the Netanyahu coalition exploit it very, very well. The debate now on the ultra-Orthodox draft makes a break between the militaristic Zionism and the government. But usually they are on the same page.
I think that's a really important point for us that we in Britain, for example, don't really get, is that when something like the 7th of October happens, the whole of the society in Israel is mobilized, isn't it? I was there on the 7th and just seeing all the buses coming in, collecting all the soldiers and everyone donating their bottles of water from their house. It's not something that we see or maybe understand fully, that, like you say, it's a whole society that's ready for that kind of scenario, prepped in some way. So this is very depressing. I do my regular appeal. We do these, we are a charity, the Britain-Palestine Project. We do things like these webinars. We make films to share information for people to understand more what's happening. We would love if you could support us in any way, but if you have the ability to give a donation, please do consider it. I've popped a link in the chat box. I mentioned at the top of this webinar that if you become a friend of the Britain-Palestine Project, which, as I said, it means you give a monthly donation to us of any amount, then it means that we can reduce our sort of admin costs. We can plan better for our future because we understand better what funding we have coming in. And it means that you get free or discounted tickets to various events that we put on. So I've popped those links in the chat box. We are going to wrap up soon, but I said to you, Menachem, I'm always trying to end these webinars on a bit of a positive note, or at least a bit of a call to action, so we don't leave feeling helpless. Okay, we've heard about this very depressing scenario, but what do we do about it? So I'm combining a bunch of questions, but we've had from Sameh Youssef, Amit Pandya, Kenneth Ramsey, a bunch of others. What can we do to help reduce the radicalization, militarization, the bubble of Israeli society? What can we say to our Israeli friends who are afraid of attacks to help alleviate that fear or open up that understanding between them and their Palestinian neighbors? And finally, specifically here for us in the UK, what can we do? Is there anything that we can do? That's a lot, sorry. How do we fix this in a nutshell?
Okay, I don't believe, I assume that the politicians have their own political interest. Unfortunately, they are much less attentive to human beings suffering than to their political troubles. So put pressure, civil society must put pressure on their politicians. Constituencies should put pressure on their delegates, with each one in his own region, to his own PM. Okay, organize groups and put pressure and do it. And please do it, because this is the only way to move the politicians and the ministers and the prime ministers to do something. Otherwise, they take into consideration the power balance between them and Netanyahu, between them and Trump, what's going on in the EU, and so on and so forth. The power is within the citizens' hand. Use it, please use it. This is the way. If the Israelis are locked into their bubble, knock on their own doors from the outside, and do it powerfully through your politicians and civil society pressure. This is one. Second, prepare together with Israeli and Palestinian partnership groups. Prepare an alternative to the two states, to the old two-state solution, to the infamous two-state solution that failed, to the Oslo process that failed. Prepare an alternative. Your government will not prepare an alternative unless it is presented to them by experts, by civil society, by interest group. Push up every alternative that can be made together, Israelis and Palestinians. Invite Israelis and Palestinians that are ready to cooperate to prepare alternatives.
Thank you so much for that. I'm about to post again our asks that were as a result of our conference. I posted a link to our conference recordings previously, but have a little look at that if you're interested. If it feels very like not enough emailing your MP, for example, let me just tell you a little bit about how we use it here at the Britain Palestine Project. We do regular email your MP campaigns about recognizing the state of Palestine and other timely things. And we can see how many messages each MP has received. So we can see them, we can map which MPs are under particular amount of pressure by their constituents. And, you know, when they tell us, oh, we were unaware of this, we know that they are not telling us the truth, for example, although that doesn't happen so much anymore. I'm pleased to say that most of the MPs we deal with, they're craving information. They want to have the pressure from their constituents so that they are obliged to go off and do something. We give them then ammunition in terms of questions they can ask in Parliament and so forth. So it is a really, really important step. And if you're not signed up to our mailing list, please do consider it, because we do these campaigns regularly, as do a bunch of other organizations. I want to apologize because honestly, I've never seen anything like it in terms of the number of questions coming in. I'm sure we will have Menachem back. We did not have a chance to go in through, there's so much. I could talk to you all day and all night about this and still feel like I have so many more questions. But I would say that we have a bunch of articles by you, Menachem, on our website. So if anyone wants more, please do have a look at our website. You can search, there's a search bar, you can search for Menachem Klein and see some of the articles he's written for us, and some links to some other articles in different places. I will pop those links in the email that I send out when the recording is available. And I just have enough time now to thank you so much for coming and speaking to us on this just such a difficult topic. And I want to thank also everyone who came along and who asked lots of questions. You were all amazing in your questions. And Menachem, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, team. Thank you, everybody that joined. My pleasure. And I'm ready to answer any question that you send me by email.
Right. Well, you've got a lot that we haven't even touched on. So I'm sure some of you will be hearing from Menachem. And thank you so much again to everyone involved. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.